whole healthcare industry is going to change dramatically in the next couple of years.
To chronic disease management and the preventative aspect of care.
AI can now understand the key clinical concepts of what's being verbalized in healthcare.
Welcome to Cherry Live. I'm Dr. Jordan Valrath, physician, entrepreneur, and Chief Medical Officer for Cherry Health. We're talking about Canadian healthcare. Join us as we speak to innovators, industry leaders, and people working to drive the health system forward. All right, today we are talking to Mahshid Yassaei. She is the co-founder and CEO of Tali AI, a voice-enabled AI assistant that helps you save time and frustration for physicians, helps them visit more patients and have more face time with them during their visits. So prior to Tali, she co-founded Evenset. That was a custom medical and healthcare software development company centered around helping entrepreneurs and established companies bring their innovative ideas to life through a fast-paced, agile software development process. She has a master's degree in computer science from McGill University and has worked with a variety of technology companies, including BlackBerry, before starting her first company in 2015. Mahshid, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get into the AI space? What actually landed you here? Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. We need more of this in healthcare.
Yeah, no, so Tali is really a spin-off of my first company, Evenset. We started Tali in 2020, and the project really started. So 2020 was a time, or 2019, 2020 was a time that in technical communities, people have started noticing the promise of large language models, not in the public audience, but I think in closer circles, people were seeing where it's taking off. And so we started Tali with the vision of building an AI assistant like Siri or Alexa for clinicians that would do their administrative tasks. Honestly, the first time I learned about the problem, the physician burnout problem, quote unquote, and I thought people were exaggerating. I was like, this cannot be.
No, we're burnt out. I promise.
Like some of the most educated and passionate people in the country are losing so much of their time for like doing data entry into software. And then I saw a few EMRs and the interface and how complicated it was to use them. I had a huge cultural shock, to be honest. So that's why we started working on Tali as of like, we imagine Tali to be like Siri, but it's designed to understand medical terminology and this specific use case to save more of clinicians' time. So we were doing a little bit of our discovery, talking to both clinicians and EMR providers to understand if there is any appetite for a project like that. And this is where, like, everybody was telling us, yeah, obviously, the problem was obvious to everybody and the solution was obvious as well. But people were asking, but can you actually do this? Is the accuracies of AI algorithms high enough? And they were right. They were like, we had to do lots of fine tuning, lots of work on these solutions to make them work. But there was a lot of skepticism around whether AI is of high enough accuracy to meet expectations of clinicians. So when we got the chance to talk to the leadership team at Well Health, we realized that they are very much aligned with how we see the future of EMRs and what can be done for the administrative burden. So at the time we were raising a pre-seed round. They took the whole round. They became investors, but more importantly, strategic partners, which helped us. They basically helped us co-design the product for over a year and a half with their clinicians, both in terms of the accuracy of the voice to text and the summarization algorithm and everything, but also all the workflows and touch points of how would an integrated solution into the EMR integrated solution. I mean it as of like integrated experience for physicians, because we identified very early on that there was very minimal room for a new piece of technology among physicians. Like the physicians were already frustrated and exhausted by technology. They were not really open to trying yet another piece of technology. So it was very important for us to be very lightweight, very integrated. That's the mindset we had. So Yeah, so we basically worked very closely together for about a year and a half. And it was early 2023. And with the release of the latest large language models, November 2022, into the product, that we realized, okay, we think we are ready to become generally available. That's when we made the product available to everybody. And it's been almost a year and a half. Wow.
It just came out of nowhere so quickly. Like you said, you founded things in 2020. Like at that point, before I think it was Chat GPT 3.5 just blasted into the world, and then suddenly AI was a household name. You know, before that, it was sort of just the troll accounts on Twitter that you
Yeah.
would see commenting. That was sort of most people's experience with
Yeah.
AI, and so we've harnessed that power for good now, which is fantastic. And
Mhm.
then it's still, you know, the just culture change within medicine, right? Because physicians, healthcare, we're very slow. We're a little bit set in our ways, but now it's just become so front and center by the entire rest of the world that it seems like, okay, we kind of have to start getting with the times and adopting some new technology. And this is like right at the tip of the spear.
It was interesting. I was at a conference last week in Toronto, and one of the audience asked a very interesting question. They asked, how long does it take before not using an AI scribe is going to be damaging to the patient and is going to be below a standard of care if you don't use it? And I was like, wow, are we already there? Are we already just asking this question? And it was, yeah.
I would argue that we probably are. Like I've worked at one clinic that actually has human scribes in it, and just the difference in workflow and like just the amount of stress on me and the amount of like
Yeah.
engagement you can actually have with the patient,
Yeah.
it's like night and day, completely different. Like going from clinic without the scribe to clinic with the human scribe makes a huge difference. And then I would say that, you know, in my experience, the AI scribe is more accurate than the human scribe. The human gets bored, the human daydreams a little bit,
Yeah.
right? The human had a fight with her boyfriend last night, which is on her mind,
Yeah.
right? All these different things impact that human performance. And even just like what is the accuracy of the AI scribe compared to the doctor themselves, right? Like you're in a rush, you're trying to get your own charting and notes done. It's often not fully fleshed out because you're trying to get home and see your kids before they go to bed, right? So I mean, the gold standard that we're even comparing to is very much subjective on its own right.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is shared by doctors that have started using a scribe as well, that they are surprised, but also their colleagues are surprised sometimes by how detailed is a referral letter they're sending or a documentation they're writing. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
How do we actually break down the categories for AI scribes? Because there's definitely like a handful of tools now on the scene, all the way from like the giants at Microsoft and Nuance, all the way to the smaller local startups. Like, what are sort of the differences, and how can somebody actually weigh out their options?
Yeah, sure. I think it so the way we look at the market is obviously a very new market. It's an emerging market, and there are companies that are focusing on specific parts of the market with the specific requirements. So if you look at Microsoft DAX or Nuance DAX, they are very focused on where their market share was initially, which is like hospitals, large healthcare systems, multi-specialty. um, we have other AI scribes both in the United States and here in Canada that we are focused in primary care settings. We're even seeing more specializations, mostly in the US, but well, also in Canada now, that are focusing only on mental health, only on physical therapy. So if I often compare the market of AI scribes right now to the market of EMRs 10, 15 years ago when they all started. Like on day one, they all looked the same, exactly the same. And then as the market matured and moved forward, there were a lot of specializations, and you could say, oh, this company is better at this, that company is better at that. And I think that's what we're going to experience in the in the next few months or year. But right now, majority of the adoption that we're seeing in AI Scribe, at least in Canada, but I think I was reading that it's the same kind of pattern in the US, is that almost 70% of adoption of AI Scribe in Canada is among family physicians and nurse practitioners. I don't think it's too surprising, because we know family physicians are the largest group of practitioners in Canada, but also um, the workflows and documentation requirements of family physicians is not as specific as a specialist might be. So, and I think the documentation burden for family physicians was a lot more aggressive than it was for, because what we're seeing in our clinics is that I shouldn't say a lot of time, but there is a higher chance that a specialist would have an assistant helping them with documentation and administrative tasks. But family physicians, for the most part, were not getting any help because the options that were available in the market were not economically reasonable for a family doctor. But yeah, I think majority of what we're seeing is among primary care practitioners. Right after that is mental health. Both psychiatrists and psychologists, even social workers and counselors, which is also surprising and not surprising at the same time. It's kind of understandable.
Well, I'm just picturing, doing a 2-hour psychiatric consult,
Yeah.
right? Where just the engagement and eye contact and things are so important, right? It's even more critical at that point compared to, standard medical visits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like just the difference it makes of having a tool do the writing for you so that you can just 100% be paying attention as opposed to trying to make notes for 2 straight hours.
Yeah.
And how do you tailor your platform to one of these specific markets then? Obviously, like primary care practitioners make up the bulk of them, but it's such a heterogeneous workflow, like you pointed out, right? It's like what you do in a day on Monday can be completely different from what you do on Tuesday. So how do you actually like build a platform that caters to an audience that's just so different moment to moment?
I think similar to any other product, the way we look at it is that we need to pick one focus group and really make an excellent product for them before moving to the second group and try to optimize for them. Majority of our clinicians are family physicians, nurse practitioners right now. So obviously a big part of our focus is to make sure that the product works just flawlessly for them. But right after that, even in our user group, are mental health specialists. So we have started the customization process for them, making sure they have all the right tools. Even the language model is ready to support the specific requirements of mental health practitioners and stuff. But our use case is that, like, our thinking is that it's very hard to start boiling the ocean all at the same time. You need to start somewhere and do a good job. And something that we're really proud of is that Tali, like, obviously similar to every other company, we are doing marketing, we're doing everything. But still to this date, our single largest source of new registrations are referral from other physicians. More than 30% of our new users are just coming from referrals of other physicians. And that's one of the benefits of focusing on a single use case and making it perfect, I guess.
We're knocking it out of the park and then just letting it grow organically.
Exactly. Yeah.
What should I don't know, in my biased family medicine perspective here, what should a family physician be considering when going to choose an AI tool? What are those even different metrics that you'd be evaluating it on?
That's a great question. We with more AI scribe providers coming into the market, this is a question that we get more often, and we realize that sometimes it's actually being difficult for physicians to try to understand others, like 10 different AI scribes in the market. How do I even choose? How do I narrow down? I think the first important metric for physicians, clinicians overall, is how easy is this product to use, how easy it is to get started with the activation process and conversion process, how easy it is to get the real value of the product. The way we have understood our physicians is that they're very busy, very high cognitive load as well. So they don't really have time for a crappy product and like 20 different clicks to get started. And that has been an area of focus, which I think is very important. So for clinicians, I think if they are trying different solutions, that will remain to be an important metric. The second is, this is a question we keep getting from users, is integration with their EMRs. I need to pause here and tell you like a disclaimer here. I think we are still in the early adopters of the market. From our own users, and there are some of our competitors' numbers as they have published, less than 5% of Canadian clinicians are using an AI scribe today. So this is not even in the early majority, and if you look at that adoption graph. And early adopters have different behaviors. They are very easy to they are very curious. They figure things out. They figure technology out, etc. They're very forgiving. If there are bugs or issues in the product, they'll just, oh, it's fine. I remember like a few months ago, there was an issue in Tali, and a doctor sent the customer support an email, say, oh, this thingy doesn't work. And I replied quickly, saying, I'm so sorry, it was weekend. So I had to reply and say, like, sorry, the team, we're going to come back on Monday. They're going to get on top of it. And she quickly replied, said, thank you so much for this product. This is so good. But that's the kind of attitude you get from early adopters. They're just very forgiving. That's not something you're going to see later on. So stability of the product is going to be a lot more important. Performance is going to be a lot more important. Another interesting thing is that what we're seeing among our early adopters is that they are very creative about how they use the product. So sometimes we get on a call and we learn from them how the product should be used, not how we have designed it and what we were thinking. I'm going to give you an example. So one of our doctors, a few examples. One of our doctors was telling us that he was putting Tali's mobile app in his pocket and would move from room to room and would capture all the conversations and come back and just do, like, at the end of the day, all the copy paste. Another was telling us he's hanging the mobile app from his neck as he was moving. So he actually showed us, like, I went on Amazon and I purchased this and it's actually working really great. All the way to, we realized that one of our physicians was telling us that their spouse was helping them with documentation at home. So as they were going through the visits, Tali would document and summarize, and their spouse at home would log into the same account, capture those, do the follow-up task, put it into the to the EMR. So there's so many, but these are all characteristics of early adopters. Another interesting thing is that when we first released Tali's AI Scribe, it was a hidden feature. It was actually it was a button that we realized people were not really using. Like, imagine like a setting button that nobody clicks on. Yeah. And we put our AI Scribe behind it. So you would click on a setting and it would actually start listening to a conversation. And then we messaged 10 physicians and said, hey, we want to show you a hidden functionality. Click on this and give us a feedback. Because to be honest, I wasn't sure if physicians would like this. I wasn't sure what would be the considerations on security, what would be the consideration on patient consent. So we're very conservative. So we released it to message 10 physicians, and then we started receiving emails from a lot more physicians. I discovered that when I click on this, it starts listening. This is so cute. This is so cool. But yeah. So everything I'm saying right now about the adoption and decision-making process is based on what we have learned from physicians so far, but also kind of a projection of what I think is going to happen in the future in terms of the decision-making process. A very recurring question is integration with the EMRs. And why is that important? If you look at most of the AI scribe solutions right now, They're either an independent desktop application or an independent web application or a Chrome extension, but they're rarely integrated with the EMR. And physicians would do a copy paste of the note into the EMR. We think the future of these solutions would require a lot more advanced functionalities, which would be very hard to achieve if you don't have a closer relationship with the EMR providers. The very small benefits of the integration right now are authentication. You don't need to authenticate to your AI scribe and also your EMR and log out and log in and log out and log in as you move from room to room. You don't have to auto-populate the fields into the EMR, not just the narrative parts, but also the structured piece into the EMR. All the way to, from the log of the conversation, you know that there needs to be a lab requisition that's sent or a form that needs to be submitted. And is the experience integrated enough to do all of those tasks and submit? So I think the future and the future functionalities would require an EMR integration. So if I was a physician, I would consider and we're seeing that a lot, that physicians are actually calling their EMR company and say, is there an AI company you would recommend? And is there something that is going to be and obviously there are other requirements like accuracy of the note, quality of the note, and all of that.
This show is brought to you by Cherry Health, Canada's medical network where healthcare practitioners connect. Physicians, pharmacists, nurses, chiropractors, and all other healthcare professionals can sign up for free, start connecting, messaging with colleagues, or checking out job opportunities posted by thousands of employers across Canada. With dozens of healthcare-specific job filters and search options, we make it easy to advance your career, find your dream job, or line up your next locum with hundreds of new jobs posted every week. www.cherry.health to get connected today.
How do you, when it comes to the accuracy of the note, is there a way to compare apples to apples, or is it, again, subjectively, you got to try out the different ones and see which one captures your patient encounter in the way that you want it reflected? And then even within that, trying the different templates and the different output options, or what is accuracy, I guess, when it comes to an AI scribe note? How do you even assess that?
That is a great question, and something that has given us a lot of headache. So overall, if you just forget about the AI scribes, any product, when somebody asks me how accurate is this product, I'm like, for whom? Under which conditions? Because when you do a self-report on accuracy of an algorithm or a product, it depends on the validation set that you're basically measuring the accuracy against. So sometimes there are some third-party organizations that would go with some common data set validation set and would run multiple solutions, say, okay, this is more accurate or that's more accurate. But again, the question comes down to how inclusive is that validation data set? If it's all male voices, native speakers, do we have different accents? Which accents do we have in the data set? What's the noise in the environment and all of that? So every time somebody tells me what's the accuracy of Tali, I say Tali is freely available. Download, try it in your environment and get a sense of how accurate. I know it's not as convenient as me telling you it's 96% accurate or not. But another concept I keep struggling with is, if I tell you that Tali is 96% accurate versus 98% accurate, how does that 2% difference in accuracy translate to performance and productivity for the clinician? I'm not clear about that. So every time somebody pushes me for a number, I'm like, I don't know how to answer that. So from the early days, one of the drivers for us to make Tali a self-serve tool and the 2-week free trial without even having to talk to us or engage with the team, just 2-3 clicks on the website. One of the main drivers was that, okay, this is a new solution category. There's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of skepticism. And we want clinicians to be able to get a sense of how effective this is on their own, in their own environment, with their own accent, with their own voice and everything. So that is that is one part of the headache I was talking about. The second is, so early days, physicians would call us and say, oh, there is an issue with you're not figuring out this specific word or the documentation. I want it to be this way or that way. But then when the user base grew, we were getting a lot of conflicting feedback. Some physicians were telling us, oh, I need this to be like that. And another physician would call us right after that, say completely different. So we were struggling internally with, is there going to be an internal compass for us to say if we're going to do an iteration on the product and on the underlying algorithms and prompts that will make us confident that we are making it better for majority of our clinicians, at least, if not for all of them. So there were work that we did for about maybe 3-4 months, really developing this internal tool all from the ground up that would take it consists of a few hundred golden notes, as we call them, which are like a full transcription. This is an ideal documentation, and this ideal documentation, we had to run it with a few physicians and few medical students that would say, hey, this, that, and then say, okay, majority of them are liking it this way. And then that golden data set for us is every time we want to iterate, we run it through that, and there's an automation that tells us, well, there needs to be like 6 out of 100 edits on these notes based on this new prompt. So, but even that, I think, is not perfect. And developing that internal compass for note quality and accuracy is going to remain to be one of the major areas of focus for AI scribes like us that want to scale to many thousands of clinicians.
What do you guys even consider to be an inaccuracy? Like, is an inaccuracy like an AI hallucination where it just says something completely out to lunch? Is an inaccuracy like an error of omission where something important just didn't get written down? Like, it's very kind of abstract in my mind when it comes to something like this. Like, I've seen so many, ER notes that have like 10 words on them, and 3 of them are like, please discharge the patient. Like, how do you even assess what an inaccuracy is?
So part of that activity that we did internally and building that framework was trying to actually do exactly what you said, categorize the kind of edits that need to be made in a note. So that our golden metric and our golden purpose is that we document the visit and physician makes no edits to the note. We just move it, done. Obviously, that's not the case right now. We see physicians making edits. We ask them to do it mostly on Tali so we can actually see what the edits have been. But we try to categorize them. So the main categories have been missing information, section relevance. So something needed to show up in subjective part, but it's actually showing an objective or vice versa. Hallucination, and we had this huge debate internally on the definition of hallucination in a note. What is actually hallucination, and what is a help to a physician, and what is turning something that was said during the visit into medical terms, which might have some side meanings. It's not exactly the word that was used in. So there were a lot of, and so we came up with all these categories, and then for every edit that's done on a note, we go back and say, okay, so there are 20 different, and all of these are automated for the most part, saying like 20% are still missing information, where the physician is adding something, like 30% is that they're deleting parts of the notes. So it's been a huge focus for the company to build, because we realized that we couldn't really scale without having that framework internally.
Yeah, like when it comes to just the scribe, like an ambient scribe transcribing everything, right? It's pretty easy to define an inaccuracy, but then when it comes to the summarizing it, that's a lot more complex of a task.
Even that, like the word summarization was like, engineers are like that. Computer scientists are even worse. We debate everything. So on the definition of summarization versus documentation, is it that we're summarizing a visit, or is it that we're documenting a visit? one feedback that we were getting from physicians is that the note is not in a professional language. So we need to understand what does it mean that's not in a professional language. So if you look at like other.ai that summarizes an actual like a normal meeting, they don't care. They use the exact words that are used in the meeting, just summarize. But it seems like in this case, we had to actually do a little bit of reasoning and turn it into some medical terminology sometimes, shorten it, long it. But there's and we got this feedback from, we were demoing Tali to one of the academic clinics in Canada. Don't want to mention the name. And they were like, this is amazing. We're going to use this. But we don't want our residents to use this because there is
They'll be spoiled
no,
and get used to it.
no, the argument was kind of, it made me think. The argument was there is a little bit of reasoning and critical thinking that goes into, that was my visit. Now I need to go back and write it down, that they didn't want the residents to lose. And that's, I think, linked here to, like, this is not just the summarization. It is a little more than that. But where is the line before it becomes hallucination, as you mentioned?
What about the privacy and security angle? Is this a little bit more straightforward, or is that even still very difficult to actually assess from product to product? Like if you're looking at a couple of them, they've all got the same buzzword on the website, or like we're either HIPAA or PIPEDA, or our data is SOC 2 or whatever it is. How do you know? Like, how do you actually determine if something is credible?
So that's one of the other differences of early adopters and other parts of the like that adoption curve. So as we are moving in the market, and we're moving up as well, meaning that it's not individual clinicians that are purchasing anymore, but there are clinic groups or clinics or hospitals that make a purchase. That requires all AI vendors to be a lot more diligent about actually doing the right thing internally, but also having all the documentation ready to just provide. So, for example, we had to go through a few months of SOC 2 Type 2 certification process, which really looks at everything. Like, how do you manage your employees? How do you manage documentation, the contracts, all the way to the tech, obviously, and the product and the architecture design. And this is like a recurring review for you to keep your certificate, which is very difficult and resource intensive, but also gives us, like me as a business owner, peace of mind, but also our physicians that somebody is, like a third party is doing that validation. On the security and privacy, my hope is that organizations like Ontario MD in Ontario or OMA would do a little bit of the work on behalf of physicians, meaning that they would do the security and privacy and say, well, these are similar to the work that they did for EMR, saying these are the products that we have done the work. We think they are safe and secure for you to use. Because what we are understanding is that most of the clinicians we meet are too busy, too high of a cognitive load to go through those privacy and security documents and make an assessment whether it's good or not.
Are there some like high yield points that people should be looking for, until this becomes sort of some kind of credential or standard like they do for the EMRs in Ontario through the OMD? Like, what should a physician or a clinic be looking for of like, okay, this is secure, this is privacy compliant?
I think there are a few things. Tali specifically, we were a little more conservative than needed. We just wanted to drop all barriers for adoption. So, for example, one metric is, does the company or the AI vendor keep the audio file or not? The significance of this is that the audio file includes the biometric of a patient. So it's another identifier of the patient in addition to their name and an identifier that might happen during the visit. So some AI scribes drop the audio file right after the transcription is done. Some others would keep it for additional functionality, obviously, sometimes I think I was seeing a demo of Abridge in the US. They would let you play back the whole audio, which is a very nice functionality to have, but it requires that they would keep the audio file. Geofencing of data is obviously important for Canadian physicians, that the data resides in Canada, that is encrypted at rest and in transit, meaning that from the time the data leaves your machine, it's encrypted in transit, and then when it's stored, it's also encrypted. All the way to, is there a de-identification process that happens on the transcription and on the summary? And also on the de-identification process, there are different levels of the de-identification that we can do. And these are all the details that what I'm saying is like, it might be a little difficult for an individual physician to dig deep and understand. That's why I hope some of the organizations would step in and do the work, or the regulatory department. Like, it's very unfashionable for a tech entrepreneur to say that I want regulatory to come in and play a role, but because we are seeing this as a barrier to adoption, we think it's going to help if a trusted organization would say, we have done the work, this is safe.
Well, I mean, it just comes up regularly in healthcare, right? Like, I've seen numerous times over the years where a large, credible healthcare organization or like public agency has a health or security breach, a privacy or security breach. And so we know these things do happen from time to time. And so that seems to be kind of the elephant in the room of like, okay, there's new technology. This isn't mainstream gold standard yet. And that's sort of that thing that I think scares a lot of people. But the benefit of the product is tremendous, right? And so it really is, not just convincing people that it's safe and fine, but actually making sure that it is truly secure and compliant.
Yeah, exactly.
What does the individual clinician need to do in terms of use of such technology to ensure that it's actually utilized and stored and secured and all of that good stuff? It's not going to be individual platform dependent or specific, I'm assuming, but just like in general, if you're wearing around a thing on your neck all day and it's recorded, like, what do you got to do to actually make sure that you are, not causing any kind of breaches?
I can answer this about the solution category, like all the other AI vendors. But to physicians that are a little more security and privacy concerned, what I suggest is, so in Tali, you can delete any single encounter or the whole history after you're done moving it into the EMR. So a lot of our clinicians are like using as Tali's history tab with the list of encounters as a kind of a task list. So if they sometimes maybe they're behind by a day or two, but they know all these encounters, and so they move it, they delete it, move it, they delete it, and Tali will get rid of that as well. So that's one way of being a little more on the safer side. I don't know, honestly, what else can be done on the user side.
It's just kind of funny, when you mentioned the doctor wearing it around his neck, I was just picturing like, the GoPro mounted on your head. Like we need that version of that, but for healthcare. Yeah. But then there'll be some privacy implications that go along with that. Yeah. What's coming up next, I guess? So you guys are already integrated with some EHRs. What has that unlocked for you, and how does that then progress going forwards? You mentioned a little bit around like, now we're not just documenting the encounter, but we're actually like creating material out of that. So like referrals and patient forms and stuff. What does that actually evolve into, not just this year, but the next 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, we have signed the agreement with EMRs that support more than 70% of the Canadian market. So I'm very excited that these are going to be like a collaborative approach, is going to benefit a lot of clinicians in Canada. But on the other side is that all collaborations are slower than a single company like a startup like us would want it to do. So it's not that all these functionalities are going to come tomorrow, unfortunately. But there are very exciting opportunities for solutions like this. And we don't think that this is something that an AI vendor like Tali would build all on their own. We're looking at is like some of these functionalities will be built by us, but some are going to be functionalities that we partner with other solutions to build. So when we have this graph of all the administrative tasks that the clinician does before the patient walks into the room, while they're talking together, after they leave the room, and there's just like different categories of activities they need to do. So starting from patient intake, inbox management, inpatient visits, follow-up actions, and all of that. And we're trying to map out like some of these functionalities. As I said, we'll try to, there is this great company that's already focusing on this problem, we need to partner up. But the way we look at it is that clinicians will probably don't want to be dealing with like 10 different AI companies for each of these different activities. They prefer to have one interface that takes care of all of their activities. And we're hoping to be moving toward that future where through different multiple partnerships, we can actually support clinicians on documentation tasks before the patient walks into the clinic to way after they've left the clinic and all the follow-ups in between. And again, I think everybody in healthcare knows the problem in healthcare has never been about technology. It has always been about integration, partnership, go-to-market, distribution, all of that. And that's where majority of our focus is. But I should admit, I was super, super excited to see the recent announcement by OpenAI. There were some very major breakthroughs. And I was looking at the demo and I was like, this is sci-fi. This is the definition of sci-fi. One interesting potential was, so they demoed the GPT-4 model being multimodal. This was very interesting to me because if you look at the AI scribes right now, we are very language focused right now. Like everything that's being said, but we don't know what's happening in the room. Sometimes clinicians have figured it out themselves, but sometimes even we tell them, when you're doing the objective, verbalize it. Talk to your patient, say, oh, I'm looking at your knee, there is a little bit of a problem here, or your temperature is 37 degrees, it's good, it's bad. But we ask them to turn everything that's happening in the room into words because of the limitation of AI scribes. Another example is I told you after family physicians, the largest group we have are mental health specialists. So a psychiatrist was telling me, well, sometimes a patient comes in and just the way they're walking is giving me a clue, or the way that they might be wearing winter clothes in summer, and that is an objective part of the no, that's a symptom. And they were like, so how can you solve it? And my answer was like, let the patient leave the room, talk to Tali, say their clothes were not appropriate. He was not, and but that is a limitation of the product, the technology. What OpenAI announced recently was that you can actually have a multimodal support, meaning that you can actually detect the emotions from a patient's face to a level. I'm not expecting that's going to be like a magic tomorrow, but the direction seems promising, that if you can sense a smell in the room or see how the patient is behaving from a camera, it seems scary.
It's terrifying sounding.
It is
How
terrifying.
long is it going to be till we have like an optical sensor to go along with the audio sensor then? Is that like coming in the near future for all these different AI applications?
I don't think near future. I think healthcare, that is one of the challenges of building for healthcare, is that you're always walking on a fine line of, is it too much technology? Is it too little technology? And I think that, for example, like having a camera watching the whole room is probably a little too much for healthcare.
It's a bit ahead of its time right now.
Yeah. But the potential of it was exciting. I was immediately thinking of at least 6-7 different problems that we know are happening. Why not the visit that could be solved by this? But I guess knowing that technology is now capable of solving that, make it one step easier to now try to figure out all the other steps and see if it can actually be deployed.
That is crazy. Okay, so we're going into the era of multimodal AI support. So I was joking about this like for the last few weeks, but it's probably not going to be too far off that we'd all just walk in with our Apple Vision Pro on and do your
I
whole
hope
patient
not.
encounter.
Even as a tech founder, I hope not. To be honest.
This is very interesting. Okay, very cool. And so I guess that's going to be the next thing is it's sensing patient body language and just like movement cues and taking all this in. I think it's definitely going to be I think the healthcare culture needs to catch up to just having some auditory sensors around first and then start working on those other multimodal pieces. But it's very cool to hear that that's the direction the
I
industry's
think
going.
I think we're being a little futuristic here. Like I think, like as we're joking about it, I think it's. I hope it's obvious that we are being a little futuristic. There are a lot of more immediate opportunities that can be solved, immediate problems that can be solved. For example, something that was an interesting part of the demo was that AI was doing a live translation or interpretation. So if a patient walks in a language that the
Yeah.
physician doesn't understand, he would do it live. I think that's like these are some immediate, non-scary use cases that will keep us busy for another few years, I think, before getting to the scary parts.
Amazing. Well, whatever it winds up being, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, as we kind of close up here, what is your personal routine for health and wellness? How do you keep yourself going when you're in the midst of running a startup AI tech company? How do you actually keep yourself functioning?
That's a good question. Uh, that's uh, that's been a big challenge, to be honest, trying to be consistent with my own health. I sometimes like I know I need to be healthy. I need to focus on myself, and I start running and I start going to gym, and then work takes up. I'm like, no, I don't have time for it. So there has been a lot of ups and downs, but exercise and running has been my biggest ways of staying reasonable and sane, I guess, throughout the day. I hope I can continue to do it consistently, but it's not consistent right now, and it's not a good thing. I don't recommend it.
I'm right there with you. Some weeks it's like a 50-kilometer run volume, and some weeks it's you've ordered pizza twice and had Chinese food once and then not even taken a shower.
Exactly.
That's the world of technology companies.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us. If anybody is looking to upgrade their practice, they're curious about getting started with an AI scribe tool, where do they find you?
They can go to tali.ai, TALI.ai. I hope the website is easy enough to navigate. You should be able to create an account in like under 3-4 clicks and get a taste of the product for yourself. But also feel free to reach out to help@tali.ai. We offer free onboarding consultation to any clinician that would require a little bit of help getting started or just asking questions. My own email is also mahshid@tali.ai. We'll be happy to take any questions personally as well.
Amazing. All right. Mahshid Yassaei, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it and hearing more about the company.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.